to another install video. This one's a little bit more exciting because I know a lot of people, there's not many videos on this, and a lot of people are interested in seeing this installed and seeing just what, what this is all about. Let me go over what it is first, and then we'll get to the actual install. But basically this is the Turbosmart Compact bypass valve. It says BOV for blow-off valve, but it's not a blow-off valve, it's a bypass valve. Don't get them confused, because if you put a blow-off valve on an otherwise stock STI, you're gonna have a bad time. I went with a bypass valve simply because that's what the stock one is. You want something that's fully recirculating. You do not want 50-50, you do not want a full blow-off valve, unless you're, have a fully built engine and that's what it's made for. But for my car, I'm only a stage 1 plus. I'm nothing crazy. I'm not pushing crazy power or boost or anything like that. I simply just wanted this because I had one on my previous 2013 WRX. I loved it. I added cool little flutters and noises to the overall sound when you're getting off on the accelerator. It's a nice looking piece. It adds a little bit more reliability to the car because this is a much higher quality than the stock bypass valve. The stock bypass valve is actually pretty good. I've been told and I've researched and I've seen that it can hold up to around 400 to 450 horsepower, which is pretty crazy. So there's really no need to upgrade this unless you're going for some pretty big power or some big numbers. Like I said, for me, that's not my case. I just like it and I wanted it for the sound and also for the look. So that's why I wanted to keep it as stock as possible in terms of how it actually works. So basically what this does, any bypass that the engine creates, it goes right back into the intake, right back into the motor. It doesn't vent to the atmosphere. It's not atmospheric. That's not a blow-off valve. So the computer doesn't get confused because that's what a blow-off valve does. Any extra air, it purges out. The way the EJ motor is set up, it expects to get that air back. And if it's venting in the atmosphere, it's going to be really confused. And it's going to run terribly. There's a channel out there that goes by Smedia, I believe is how you pronounce it. He kind of went over a very in-depth description and talk about the difference between the 3 different types of valves that you can get. And he actually showed you what your car would sound like and what it would do if you put a blow-off valve onto an otherwise pretty stock STI. And it's not a good thing. So if you want to do something like this is the way to go. I was between this one and the Cobb bypass valve. For me, I went for the Turbosmart mainly because I have experience with this. I've had this on a previous car. I know exactly how to install it. I know exactly how it's made and how it held up and everything. So I'm really happy with it. So I went with this one. The Cobb is a little bit more expensive. But honestly, they're very similar in terms of overall quality. Turbosmart is, the way they market it is they just market it cheaper. It's not, they just have a lower price point. It's not because it's a cheaper product or it's made any less. Cobb, you're obviously paying for the brand a little bit. Obviously it's a nice piece, but I believe the Turbosmart is on par with quality and overall performance. So I just went with this one because of that. So I did an unboxing on this, an unboxing video earlier, but let's open this up and see what you get in here. Basically, you get the bypass valve that's in the actual bag. You get a gasket that comes with it. You get a cool little sticker that I'm not going to use, and you get 2 screws that you're going to use for the install. And this is just a little card that comes in here saying that if you have questions on how to install it, you can go to turbosmart.com/instructions. But hopefully this video, you won't need that and you'll see exactly how to install it because I'm going to show you step by step what you need to do. But basically it's a very simple removal and install. I'll show you really quickly on this. This is the stock bypass valve that comes on all EJ motors, or STI EJ motors I should say. The WRX one's a little bit different, but the STI one, it's basically 2 12mm bolts on the side here. And then there's a hose clamp that you need to get off the elbow here, and then the vacuum line here, which you'll pull off. And that's it. For the Turbosmart, you are going to reuse the stock elbow here. So there's a little screw and gasket and everything right here, I'm pretty sure there's a gasket in there. But you're going to reuse this whole piece, which is nice. So everything's going to fit into that hose right there really nicely. It's going to clamp exactly how it is right now. So it should fit just like OEM. Let's take a look at the bypass valve out of the bag. It's very nice quality, has a nice weight to it. It's got a nice engraving here, the Turbosmart logo. You can see on top here, Turbosmart Compact. You want to make sure you have the compact version. That is the fully recirculating version. And you got your little nipple here for the vacuum line, and there's the actual components inside. There's the underside where it's going to attach to the intercooler, and you do get a gasket with it that you are going to use. So it's pretty straightforward. Very, very nicely made. Feels good in the hands, and it's like I said, it's black, so it'll look much better in the engine bay instead of that ugly silver. So the tools that you're going to need, you're going to need a ratchet. I'm going to use a 3/8 inch ratchet here. I'm going to use an extension as well, just because the 12 millimeter bolts are kind of far back, and you don't want to you want to make sure you have good leverage. So I'm going to use, let's see, I'm going to use a 6-inch extension right here. I had trouble saying that, so that's why I said it really slow. I kept messing up, so. But yeah, I'm going to use this one because it's nice and long, and it'll give me good leverage to the actual bolts. And then next, I'm going to get a long 12 millimeter socket, and I'm also going to need some needle nose pliers to get that clamp off the hose. So that's basically all that you'll need to remove that bypass valve and also to install it. It's not many tools at all. It's pretty straightforward. For this one, you are going to need some Allen keys to use these. So I'm going to, I guess I'll get out some Allen keys here. That's the long drawer. So I'm going to use this. I use this all the time. It has different sizes and everything. So that's pretty much all that you need. The only thing that might be a little bit different, you might use something different on the hose here. You don't want to crimp this or crack it or anything, because it doesn't come with anything else. You're going to be reusing the stock line, so you got to be careful with that when you pull it off. But otherwise, that's all the tools you need. So let's get to removing this from the car. All right, guys, so I got the stock bypass valve off the car. Just got to be careful with the hose for this part. You don't want to pry it too much. You don't want it to crack or anything. I ended up using a long flathead and kind of just pushing it down. You got to be careful. It is sharp, but as long as you're careful and you're kind of wiggling it as you're pulling, it'll come off easily. And the vacuum hose is pretty simple. You kind of just, what I did was kind of not seized on there, but it was kind of stuck. So I just twisted it once I got everything off, and then it slid right off. So that was pretty easy. But as you can see, this is what the stock one looks like. This is the gasket. It had some gasket, I guess, I don't know, glue or adhesive to stick to the actual intercooler side, but it popped right off. I don't think it's gonna be an issue, obviously, that I'm not using on this one. This one's a much better quality. Well, this one's metal, I believe, so this might be a little bit better. But it obviously has a different gasket opening, mainly because, as you can see, this is the stock one, this is the Turbosmart one. It has a different opening, so you want to make sure you use the one that actually came with it, because if you look on the bottom here, it does have a little bit of an oval opening here, and that's what that's for. So it allows all the gases and the air and everything that needs to escape properly. So if you look on the bottom of this one is a circle, so you're going to have to use that gasket. So now what we're going to do, what I did was line up the vacuum hose, so this thing can swivel, so you can position it to anywhere you need it. So I kind of positioned it to where the stock one is, in the same direction. Obviously I can move it and adjust it once it gets on the car. But now what I'm going to do is remove this elbow, which is just 2 Phillips heads, and swap this elbow over to the stock one. This is a pretty cool screwdriver I have. It's made by Wera, I forget how you pronounce it, but it's a German company. They actually use this stuff this is what the Porsche factory uses on their cars. Not this specific screwdriver, but this brand. So it's very it's very nicely made. It's got all the different attachments in here. It's really, really cool. I can leave a link below if anybody's interested. This is kind of my go-to screwdriver if I have to do something around the house, or even obviously on the car. I just grabbed this because it literally has everything that I need in one little package. But for this one, I'm going to need a Phillips head. So all you gotta do is take it out of there, and you just push it in and it locks in. Pretty cool. So as you can see, the two Phillips heads here, just gonna remove them. Kind of tight. The only thing I believe you can get a ratcheting version of this, which would be really nice. And it's also magnetic too. So, but you know, beggars can't be choosers here. Gonna remove this side. I had to do it off camera. It was pretty tight, and I was afraid I was gonna strip it, but thankfully I didn't. Just go slow if you're ever nervous about stripping something, and make sure it's turning properly and you're not stripping the head of the screw. So, got this one off. Nice and easy. Well, I shouldn't say easy, but I got it off. And there is no actual gasket, but there is a little rubber O-ring around here. You're obviously just going to leave that on because you're going to put this right onto the Turbosmart one. But basically, you can take a look inside. Always cool to see how things work. I'm not an engineer, and I probably would never be able to be one because I'm not smart enough. But I'm always fascinated by just this kind of stuff and how it works, and just cool to see. So now we're gonna take the Turbosmart one. This thing is just so nice. The stock one's actually kind of light. This one has some nice weight to it. So I guess the only bad thing is I'm adding some weight to the car, if you want to get technical here. But yeah, you're literally just taking this off, popping it right onto the Turbosmart. You do want to note, see there is a little tab right here. You do want to line that up. There's a little notch. It's kind of hard to see, but there's a little notch right there. So you just want to make sure that one lines up. Otherwise, and just kind of push it in. The screws will seal it and get a good connection. So you just want to get the screws started, and you can tighten everything down and it'll seal it really nice. When you're tightening this down, you want to don't tighten down one side yet. You kind of want to go back and forth so you get an even seal. You know, just go back and forth until everything is tight. All right, so there you go. It's installed. You can see there's no gap or anything. It's sealed up really nicely all around. So really cool. I like that you're using the OEM piece here because it's going to fit really nicely. But I mean, this is not the prettiest looking thing. I guess the only gripe about this is, you know, with the cob one, it does come with the elbow, or it's already connected. So I guess there's less chance of leaks or anything like that, since it is all one piece from what I can see and what I've read up on. But again, this part you don't even see. It's tucked into pretty much the whole thing is pretty much in the hose down there. So you're not gonna even see it. But I guess there is a chance for this to leak if that was an issue. But these are tightened down really well, and I have no worries or anything like that this is gonna leak at all. But just make sure these screws are tight before you install it. But otherwise, just get your gasket, and you're gonna do everything I just did in reverse order and get this installed on the car. So before I put this on the car, I noticed obviously it comes with two Allen screws, and these are the stock bolts, and these are the I don't know if you got, oh, there you go. As you can tell, this is the stock bolt. That's the one Turbosmart came with. They are quite a bit shorter. I think I'm going to use the OEM bolts here just because it has way more threads and it will have a much tighter seal. And plus these have already been threaded into the stock intercooler threads. So these will go in nice and smooth. I'm sure these will too, but there's also a chance. I'm not a really big fan of hex heads or Allen key heads, just because they can strip, and if these things strip, you're in for a bad time. For something like this, a 12mm bolt, if it does get stripped, there's ways to get this out much easier than something like that. So I'm going to reuse the stock bolts. You can use whatever ones you want, but I just feel more confident in the stock 12mm. All right, so let's go down the car. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put the hose back on the elbow here, just because I guess that's the hardest part, and you want to make sure that's seated correctly before obviously you bolt everything down. Because everything else you can access up top once this is in, your vacuum line right here, you can get that right on top, and the bolts are easy to access. So you want to install the elbow first. It might be a little tough. There's not too much room to work in, but it should go in pretty easily. Sealed up nice, obviously, because it's the stock piece, so it's slid right in. no problem. I moved the, I guess the clip onto the metal clip here over to this side a little bit more, just so I have access to it, because normally it's pointing up and you have to unbolt this first to get to that clip. But now that I kind of put it to the left a little bit, I have access to it if I really need it. Before you put that clip back on, you want to make sure you have a good seat all around, and it lines up to the bolt holes here. And you know, you got your vacuum hose. Obviously I didn't put that on. I don't have the gasket on yet, but I'm just gonna slip it on right before I bolt it on. But I just wanted to show you guys that the hose is nice and sealed all around. I can't really get access or a good camera angle, but you get the idea. There's not a lot of room to work in there, so it's kind of tough to get your hands in. I don't know how it is for the Cobb, since it is the aftermarket elbow, so it might be a little bit harder to get on. You might have to use a lot of people use Windex around the tube just to get some lubrication so it slips on easier, but I tend not to like to use anything, just try to get it on without any of that, just so nothing gets into the piping or anything like that. It's just kind of, I don't know, doesn't sit well with me. But yeah, so I got that hose clamp on. Now I'm just going to hook up the vacuum line here, put the gasket on, and tighten it up. You can slip the vacuum line right on. What I might do is actually put a little zip tie on here, just to kind of have some reassurance that it's going to stay on. You know, you can use the little C-clamps. They didn't provide any C-clamps, metal C-clamps that you can use. So what I'm going to use, I'm probably just going to use a small zip tie just to kind of hold it in place. I don't really imagine it really slipping off, but just in case, just for added reassurance. I mean, it comes off pretty easily, so maybe it might be wise to put a little zip tie there, and maybe I'll pick up some C-clamps just to have some reassurance there. Okay, so now I'm going to put the gasket in and bolt this up. Everything else is done. Just make sure you don't, drop the gasket. The best thing to do, sorry if I'm in the way, is to take your bolt. I'm using a stock bolts, slip it through, and put the gasket on there, so the gasket stays on. Just kind of thread it in. Get your other bolt, line up the gasket. So just make sure you're seated correctly in the threads. You don't want to, if you feel any resistance while you're tightening, you want to stop. Make sure everything is going in smoothly, because you don't want to force anything in, because odds are it means you're stripping and cross-threading the threads, and you don't want to do that. So I got these pretty hand tight, and they're still going in easily, which is a good sign. I'm just going to grab my 12mm ratchet or socket, tighten it up. You're gonna do the same thing. You want to tighten a little bit on this side, tighten a little bit on this side. Sorry, I had to take the extension off because it was hitting the camera. So it's going in nice and easy. So just go back and forth, make sure you have good torque on either side. I'm just gonna make sure they're down, firmly. You don't need a torque wrench, I don't believe. If there is, I can look up the specs and I'll tell you. But just make sure it's a good seal. You don't have to tighten them too much. So yeah, that's good. My wrist is calibrated. Yeah, just make sure it's tight. Nothing. Don't manhandle it and go over tight, because you can strip this. But those seem to be nice and tight. Just make sure once again. Okay, nice and tight. All right, so for added reassurance, just to make sure this vacuum line doesn't pop off. I mean, if it pops off, it's not a big deal. You'll know right away. But I'm gonna use this little zip tie just to add some reassurance. I'm gonna get this zip tie, tie it as close to the front as I possibly can. Obviously a C-clamp will be much prettier looking, I think, especially if I get it on titanium or something like that, because I do sell those. But for now, I'm just gonna use this zip tie, tighten it down. That should be plenty. Make sure it's just held into place well. And then what you're gonna do is take some clippers and cut off the excess. And I'm gonna try to, there you go. Not the prettiest looking thing, but it'll do the job. It'll hold it in its spot, and just to make sure, there's no, yeah, it's definitely tighter. So I do recommend doing that. You know, if you do have the little metal C-clamps, those will probably work a little bit better. I do plan on, it's like these, just so, I keep on saying C-clamps, but like these on the intake, just the small circle ones that you can use right on there, slip them over. I'll try to find them in black, just so it matches. I don't know if I'll be able to, but it'll be a little project for me. Really simple install, really fun to do. It's not over the top. You know, out of 10, this is probably a 3. If you don't have to be really mechanically inclined, there's not much to it. It's literally those 2 bolts there and that clip and pulling up a hose. And obviously doing those 2 little Phillips head screws. But I believe a lot of people that are interested in doing something like this can handle the install. It's very simple, very straightforward. There you have it. There's the install. Everything fit perfectly. There was no weird fitment issues or questions that I was asking myself as I was installing it. Just bolted right up. You know, there's a nice tight seal back there. You know, it's on there very firmly. It's not going anywhere. The only question is this was a little loose, but having that zip tie there is just some added reassurance. And it is using the stock elbow, as I said earlier, so I know that's fitting in there nice and securely. So yeah, everything looks good. That's it for this video, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for watching. I know a lot of people were interested in seeing this install and just seeing kind of my overall thoughts. But overall, I'm very happy with it. I think it looks cool. I'm happy it's done. And I'm happy it went smoothly. Sometimes these simple things can turn into hours and hours of long hard work. But thankfully this went very smoothly. I didn't drop any bolts. I didn't break any lines or anything silly like that. So that's it for this one. I appreciate you guys checking out the video, checking out my channel. I do plan on installing more parts to this car. I do have more stuff coming in. Be sure to check them out. I am waiting to hear back from Subi Speed about the carbon fiber fender shrouds here. This side, there were some defects in it. This side was good. So I'm pretty sure they're gonna send me out a new set. So once I get them back in, I actually have them sitting right there. But once I get the new set in, I'll be installing those, going over and doing the same kind of concept that I did with this install, you know, going over what it looks like and installing it and just giving you my initial impressions and everything. And I think it'll look really nice in here. You know, paired everything with the carbon fiber here and just around the car, I think it'll be a nice touch and get rid of these ugly, you know, cloth looking pieces of plastic or whatever they are. But yeah, so that's it for this one, guys. Be sure to hit that like button. It really does help my channel. It really does help me. I'll leave a link below where you can find this as well. If you guys are questioning which one you should get, either this one or the Cobb. They're both very, very, very similar. I just preferred this one because I was familiar with it. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys. I appreciate it. And I'll catch you guys in the next video. Use a 6-inch for the 3-inch. I'm going to use a 6-inch. I'm going to use a 6-inch extension. I'm going to use a 6-inch extension. Jeez. I'm going to use a 6-inch extension here. I'm going to use a 6-inch. I can't say that. I'm going to use a 6-inch extension. I can't.